afternoon to you, Stephen. Well, it's quite clear in this year's SANA debate that what took center stage is having MPs basically coming out guns blazing against President Cyril Ramaphosa's ministers for failing to execute some of the work that they're mandated to do as ministers from different departments. And of course, the Democratic Alliance coming out to announce that they've tabled a motion of no confidence in President Cyril Ramaphosa's cabinet. I am joined, you're correct, by John Steenhusien, the leader of the official opposition party. John, well, this motion, talk to us about any time frames around it. Has it landed in the Speaker's office yet? What are we looking at?
Yes, Athi, it was tabled today in the Speaker's office because it's a constitutional motion in terms of Section 102 of the Constitution. The rules dictate that it has to be given precedence in the programme. So we're hoping that as soon as the SONA debates are finished, we can move into this debate, particularly because the President triggered this by showing that he has no confidence in his cabinet. He's hired a whole lot of people from the outside to essentially come into his office to do the work that his cabinet minister should be doing. So it's very clear that even he knows that whatever he announces, it's going to sink like a ton of bricks the moment it lands in the cabinet.
So who are you proposing to replace these ministers that you want to be axed?
Well, I think what we would like to see is a smaller cabinet and certainly a shuffling out of people who are implicated in the Zondo Commission reports, people who have been tangled in corruption and maladministration, and those ministers in the security cluster who've been singled out, people like Becky Cele, for instance, who've been singled out by that high-level panel report for a complete failure to protect lives and livelihoods and have damaged the economy up to 50 billion rand. Those people are not fit to be in the cabinet. Now, it's very clear the President either doesn't have the heft or the will to be able to remove them from his cabinet. So we're saying let Parliament do that. We will pass a motion of no confidence, and that'll then give him a free hand to bring people into his cabinet who he believes can actually get the work done. But clearly, if we're expecting the curr't lot to get anything right, I think if anything the last 5 years have shown us, it's not going to happen.
So you have no idea at this stage who you'd want to replace the President's cabinet?
Well, no, and that will be the President's prerogative about who he puts back into the cabinet. But at least then we would hopefully be able to have people in key ministries who are going to be able to do the job. Because this lot have really failed South Africa on every single level, whether it's the July violence, whether it's the failure to cut red tape, whether it's a failure to protect our public buildings and assets. These are all ineptitude and failure on behalf of the cabinet, and therefore we're saying let's clear them out, let's get new people into his office who are fit for purpose and able to get on and deliver what South Africa needs.
A new cabinet, perhaps then a new president. Would you then also table something similar against the president himself?
No, we're not tabling it against the president because...
Would you be open to doing that because you claim that he has failed in many instances?
No, I'm not going to table a motion of no confidence in the president, and I'll tell you why. Because I'm not going to open the door for David Mabuza or Lindiwe Sisulu to come and occupy that position. I think the president made some good announcements in his SONA, and I think if he can get those economic reforms right around his own party, we will be able to see progress going. So I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. We're saying let's get a new team of people around you to try and breathe life into these things you've told us you're going to do. And let's hope that this year's SONA, after having decent people in place, is not going to be just another laundry list of promises.
Another issue that came out is the centralization of power in the presidency. Your response or comment to it?
Well, again, as I said in the input I made today, he's doing this because he doesn't have faith in his cabinet. He doesn't have faith in a cabinet minister to be able to run the state security agency. He doesn't have faith in a small business minister to cut red tape. He doesn't have faith in his environment minister to go out and sell the just transition. He doesn't have faith in all of these ministers, and he is consolidating that power in the presidency precisely because he's lost trust with his cabinet. And he knows that whatever assignment they're given, they're not going to achieve it, just as they haven't over the last 2 decades in South Africa.
You speak, of course, about the issues within governance, and governance is under the African National Congress. They have had issues which have subsequently led to the state of affairs in the country as a whole. I'm interested to find out what your view is as the leader of the DA about what's happening here in the Western Cape around Mr. Fritz, who was let go, and all the allegations, sexual harassment allegations around him. How are you dealing with those very serious issues pertaining to the DA here?
Well, absolutely, and I said right from the beginning that we have taken this matter incredibly seriously. The Premier was proactive. He didn't wait for a media expose. He went out and proactively said, these allegations have been brought to my attention. I'm taking the following action. I'm suspending Minister Fritz, and we're going to have an independent investigation into the allegations. And I think that was the right thing to do. It has to be independent so that we can make sure there's no fear or favour in that investigation. Minister Fritz then stepped down before we could suspend him from all party duties as a leader of the Western Cape. I think what now needs to happen is the investigation needs to happen, and I can assure you that if those findings come out and they are adverse against Minister Fritz, we will take the necessary action as a party, but also the Premier will take the necessary action as government. If there are criminal charges to be laid, they must be laid. But I think at this stage these remain allegations, serious allegations, and I think they are being treated with the seriousness that they deserve. The Premier has already said that, that he has been in consultation with the individuals involved. There may be other people involved, and that investigation is continuing, but we regard this as very, very serious. Now, the ANC have a lot to say about this, but they protected Mr. Maurice Fransman for over 2.5 years when he faced those serious allegations, which he was subsequently found guilty of. So they mustn't come and start trying to force the DA's hand or lecture the DA about morality. It is their own government and their caucus in the Western Cape that rallied around Mr. Fransman after the despicable allegations made against him. Contrast that to the way the DA has responded to these allegations, and I think you can see a government that takes these things seriously.
Quickly, John, I do want to let you go so you can go back in. Just your comments on the extension of the 350 Rand grant?
Yeah, well, I think it's a good idea, but the thing is that we can't keep extending it in ad infinitum because South Africa doesn't have money. What we've got to do, and we said we'll support it, but what you've got to then have is medium and longer term measures to fix the economy and create jobs. It can't be the permanent solution to poverty, inequality and unemployment in South Africa. We've got to have a long-term solution that can only come from growing the economy and, as the President said himself, creating the environment for the private sector to create jobs and making sure we can get people into employment. That is the long-term benefit. But in the short term, we need to keep people fed, we need to keep them off the streets, and we need to make sure they can provide for their children.
The EFF coming out to be against that notion by the President that jobs can't be created by government, but the private sector, saying that the private sector goes as far as exploiting its workers. What would you say to that?
Well, I'd say government exploits its workers. There's only one organisation that gets away in this country by paying below the minimum wage, and that's the Expanded Public Works Programme. It's the Working for Water Programme. So in fact, it is government that pays people below the minimum wage. Successful economies the world over are run in an environment where government and business partner to be able to create an environment to create jobs. That is the only way. Mr. Malema comes from the Marxist school of thought, and we've seen where that ends up. It ends up in Venezuela, ends up in Zimbabwe, where people get poorer and they suffer and are more hungry and have a worse life expectancy. Solid economic growth is the only way out of poverty and into opportunity for South Africans, and that's why we need to get down to business focusing on it now.
Thank you so much for your time, John. I would have loved to continue. You can go back as they continue to debate President Cyril Ramaphosa's State of the Nation address.